Don't forget all this coming to you via the internet, non-broadcasting, all this coming to you without any of your tax dollars being used. We're not asking for levies. We're not asking for grants or for money for special projects. Though, I have to say, after what happened this weekend, I'm not entirely against a little bit of state funding to make pieces of, well, I don't know, broadcast art content that might not otherwise be made. I went to see the Pike River movie on Saturday evening, early afternoon. The story of the 2010 mining disaster at Pike River. On a Friday afternoon, 29 men lost their lives when methane gas exploded in a mine at Pike River, a woefully run mine, a new mine. Two of the people in that mine survived, and what followed was a national shame and disgrace that stretched for years and years. And what happened to the families of the 29 men who were essentially, I would say, murdered by the Pike River Mine Company? Well, they were going to, and this is portrayed in the movie that I watched, they were going to have their day in court, health and safety charges against the guy who ran the mine, but the government, the insurance company, and I believe our judiciary perpetrated one of the most appalling events of corruption and skullduggery in the history of this nation. And for $3 million in insurance money, $110,000 per dead miner, the company, the government, the police, and everyone washed their hands of the culpability for those 29 deaths. Shameful. And this movie brought that shame back to me in a visceral and human way. Robert Sarkis, I think, wrote or produced it. It starred Melanie Linsky and Fiona Samuel. They built the story of Pike River around two women who I spoke to at the time, Anna Osborne. Was the first one played by Melanie Linsky, and Anna lost her husband. And then Sonia Rockhouse, who had two sons inside the mine and an ex-husband who was like the safety officer. So that was Robin Malcolm's role. And the growing or the formation of their friendship as grieving victims of Pike River and the narrative about what went on really is the central part of the movie. I'm going to tell you this, it's not an easy watch. And the person I went to see it with said relentless. If this were a Hollywood movie, and it's not, it's made with New Zealand on air money, they would have a more uplifting kind of love story or some central theme, and they'd alter some facts. And I suspect because New Zealand is such a small country, and these events happening just 15 or less years ago are quite recent, that this story is very, I think, accurate to the facts. So much so that I almost double took when I saw the actor playing Nigel Hampton QC, because he was so good. I thought for a moment, I said, oh, they've got him to play himself. But no, it was an actor, and I'll find his name and I'll give it to you. Just nod of the hat to that performance, which was so Nigel Hampton QC, it wasn't funny. But the story doesn't have much lightness in it. Well, it's set on the West Coast. It's raining most of the time. But boy, it reminds us the terrible, terrible circumstances that befell that, and the failure of us as a society to find justice for the victims and the families. Our utter failure. And a failure, I'm sorry to say, that lives on to this day. That lives on to this day. So I think well worth seeing, and a movie that couldn't have been made without some New Zealand taxpayer money, because no one would have bothered. It wouldn't have made it in Hollywood unless you'd taken the story and warped it completely out of shape. So I want to say actually thumbs up, but there are some criticisms. I don't think the person who played Jacinda Ardern completely nailed it. She looked a bit false. I say that jokingly because Jacinda Ardern played herself. But unfortunately, and because this was approved by New Zealand On Air, the funding and the Film Commission, who are all hopeless Labour lefties, this movie couldn't resist the urge to play politics at the end. And I think that devalued completely the thing. Now, I've got no objections with Helen Kelly being portrayed by Lucy, incredibly well portrayed again by Lucy Lawless. Helen Kelly was involved in this, and I thought Lucy's portrayal of Helen was spookily like Helen Kelly. But the narrative of the story was that Jacinda saved the day by saying in the 2017 election she'd re-enter the mine. Actually, it was Winston Peters who made it an issue, but clearly the producers didn't want to give so much time and coverage to Winston, and he wasn't invited to play himself. And as it was, the coalition government that was formed in 2017 had made a half promise. And in 2020, Andrew Little, the working man's mayor, Andrew Little did the dirty on the people of Pike River again. And they only went, I think they went a couple of Ks down the mine shaft, and then they said too dangerous. And they did what National did. They broke their promise. They walked away. But that wasn't mentioned in the movie or in the credits. They decided to leave it as Labour being the great white hope for the working class. And I think that betrayed a sense of politicisation of this project, which detracted from what otherwise would have been, in terms of a piece of Kiwi historic filmmaking, a near-flawless project. So shame on you, producers, for being that silly, because it sticks out like dog's bollocks. I do want to ask this morning if people remember Pike River, and I just want to remind you what happened. A woefully inadequate mine that hadn't been safely monitored or safely built, largely due, in part at least, to the objections of greenies and environmentalists who didn't want it built there, so they had to compromise on the design. And then desperate men who wanted money went and worked there when they knew it was unsafe, and it blew up and killed 29 of them. And who was held to account? Well, no one. The police lied to the families in the first instance about whether or not their men were alive and dead. They already had footage showing they were all dead. They didn't tell them about that till months, I think may have even been years later, of the photographs they had. Our emergency response was utterly inadequate in every way. And then when they tried to prosecute the person who operated the mine, Peter Whittle, under the Health and Safety Act, a dirty closed-door secret deal was done between the government, the insurers and the mine company that denied the families justice and did not hold anyone accountable. Andrew Little was part of it, and actually Jacinda Ardern, you were too. And I just want to say to Anna Osborne and Sonia Rockhouse and Bernie Monk and the rest of you, bloody hell, we let you down.